what was it, early 2000s?
Yeah, early to mid 2000s.
Damn, that's crazy because you seem young, but it
Right?
seems like so long ago.
It does.
Yeah.
It feels so long ago.
Yeah. So, like quick background. Just tell everybody about your running career. High school, college. You just want to start out with that.
Okay, cool. So we can start there. So when it came to running, I wanted to run in eighth grade. Tried out for the track team. I think I did pretty well in tryouts. The track coach actually saw me in a PE class. We did that typical mile that they have everyone do, like every class. Like, hey, everybody go out and run a mile. And I don't know what it was that day. And I was just like, hey, let me see what I could do. And I ended up beating the kids in the class. I think I ran like 6 minutes, which wasn't, it's not blazing fast, but it was fun. So the PE coach was like, hey, you should try out for track. Little did he know I was kind of like a problem kid. So I was always getting suspended for whatever reason, whatever the case may be. But I had amazing test scores. So I passed every grade, even though I didn't do any work. So I tried out for the team, and I made the team, of course, but then we had like eligibility checks for grades, and I didn't have the grades to run. I think I was like a 1.3 GPA in eighth grade, and that was like absolutely terrible. So then the track coach was like, hey, there's track at Fort Lauderdale High School. So I was like, yeah, that doesn't help me right now. And he's like, well, do your work, this last quarter, and just give it a little bit of effort. Just try, and I was kind of upset with my teachers because they gave me the grades that didn't allow me to run. But I did my work every other day after that point. And I think I ended with like a 3.7 GPA my last quarter. So it was pretty decent. Then I went over to Fort Lauderdale High for their open house. Their head coach, Coach David Martin, he welcomed me in. He was like, hey, kid, look, middle school coach told me a lot about you. He said that you could be good if you gave it an opportunity. I'm going to give you that opportunity, but it's not going to be easy. They had just won the state championship like a couple weeks prior to that. So it was like, yo, I want to come in here and be somebody. Ran cross and track all 4 years there. Then I ran a little bit in college for multiple schools, multiple clubs. We'll go into detail on that later if you want.
Yeah.
And then around 19, 20 years old, somewhere around in that age, I just started coaching. And then been coaching ever since. I just turned 30 a couple months ago, and I am just getting started in this coaching thing. It's fun. It's a passion of mine.
Yeah, and so you started coaching at 20, which kind of sounds like what Ryan did, and honestly, it kind of sounds like what I might do because I like, I'm very interested in coaching, and obviously I'm fully bought into running and stuff. So I think, why not start now, Okay, so real quick, I just want to ask you, so going into college, what were your PRs and what college did you attend?
Okay, so this, wow, every question could be an hour long, so I'm gonna try and be short and concise. I think when you hear the explanation, it'll start to show you why I am the way that I am.
Okay.
So my first year out of high school, I attended Weber International. I applied for a lot of different schools. I applied to go to the University of Michigan, applied to go to Baylor, applied to go to Florida. Baylor really wanted me to attend. Like it would have been really, really special. But in high school, I was more of a one-track minded athlete. I was more of an athlete student than a student athlete. So I literally did my work because, I needed to stay eligible, but it was always like, hey, 2.0, 2.0 keeps you eligible. 2.0 is what we're going to do. And so when it came down to graduation, I didn't have the 4 English credits required to be an NCAA eligible athlete. And it was disappointing because my heart was set on going to the University of Florida. And I researched the coaches. I had teammates that I looked up to that ran there. You know, I was like, yo, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna work my way onto the team. I'm gonna do what I have to do, whatever the case may be. That's what's gonna happen. And then it was like, hey, you're not gonna be NCAA eligible, so it doesn't really matter. So I reached out to any college coach I could find in the state of Florida and outside the state of Florida. I had two choices. I could either go to Cloud County Community College in Kansas, or I could go to Weber International in Babson Park. And for me, I'm a Florida boy. So anywhere that snowed was like, nah, that's not going to happen.
I know.
And I ended up choosing Weber International, which Dr. Ormsby, who I believe coaches at UNC Pembroke, he's the director of track and field there now, was a great distance coach. He actually sparked my coaching career because coming out of high school, I was like a 4:38 miler, a 2-flat 800 guy, like a 50-second split, sub 50. I just don't know what it was, so I guess I'll just say 50. And about 10, 15 or so with the 2 miles. So I have versatility.
But you're a coach now. You can lie about your times.
Oh no, we don't do that.
It was so long ago. You could just lie.
Right. It was before Florida Runners recorded everything, so you could easily lie. But Dr. Ormsby and I kind of butted heads a little bit because the things he talked about and he explained to us when it came to workouts, I had no idea what those concepts were, and he was just like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is lactate threshold. This is that. And he's like, hey, we're gonna do 200 today, and they're gonna be 35 seconds. And I looked at him and I'm like, why are we doing 35 seconds 200s? 35 second 200s. Those are too easy. You know, I want to run something faster. I want to do something different. And I was that hard-headed kid that was, clashing with his coach. And we had some success there. I had some injuries. But I think at the end of the year, it was, hey, this is the direction we want to go in, and this is the direction I want to go in. And those two paths didn't align. So I decided to go back home and focus on my studies, do what I had to do in order to get what I wanted. So I went home after that first year, and I started coaching at Hollandale High School. That was where I started my coaching career. And I coached there that year for 2 years. And I attended Broward College with the intent to transfer to the University of Florida. I competed unattached and for my track club at the same time. You're an athlete, you can't get that bug out. And then when I graduated from there, I had met the coach, Coach T at University of North Florida. And she said, hey, you could go to Florida and you could try out, or you can come to North Florida and you can, run here. So after a brief stint at FAU, I went there for a semester just because I don't even remember the reason why. I transferred to UNF. And ironically, they went through a coaching change when I transferred in. Mark Van Alstyne was the director when I was coming in, and I communicated with him. And then when I got there, Coach Pig came in, and Mark Van Alstyne went to UNC Chapel Hill. So with coaching changes, of course, everything that one person says goes out the window, and this is a new regime and what they want. Yep. And I didn't fit in that mold. So I attended school there, worked with some athletes up there for a couple years, and then ran up there, and then eventually I moved back home with the intent to coach again at Boyd Anderson High School. I was there for a year, did a couple special things there with a really, really impressive staff. And then at the end of that season,
my bad to interrupt you, but did you coach? I don't remember his name. I remember he was like a 151 guy back in like.
Oh, Javon Patterson.
Yes.
Interesting story about that. I'll get to that in a second. Let me just finish.
Okay.
I know. Just I'm gonna. It's gonna real quick.
Okay.
So after that year at Boyd Anderson, I went to Fort Lauderdale, and that's where I've been the last 5 years.
Hmm.
Um, to reference back to Javon, I did have a hand in what he was doing. I wasn't the only hand involved.
Okay.
At one point, when Javon was in, I believe, 7th or 8th grade, we were training partners. So
Hmm.
he was a sub 2 guy in middle school
Yeah.
because he had sub 2 guys he was training with.
Yeah.
Um, so picture me, I think I was like 20 years old at the time. And there's this 13-year-old kid, and we are going stride for stride, doing 300 repeats, 200-meter repeats, stuff like that. He is a talent. You know what I mean? Like Javon was a very special case. 48-second guy in high school, 151 as a sophomore.
Yeah.
He was directly coached by his grandpa, who also coached me, and Coach Fan, Coach Dawn's Fan. She did a lot, and of course, I had input. And then while I was in Jacksonville, she was coaching him, so we would collaborate a little bit. But he was more a training partner than an athlete.
Okay. So Ryan.
Cause I was just looking at your Facebook the other day. What degrees did you get with going through all those schools? Like I saw you had marketing, and I saw you had exercise science. Like what degrees do you have now?
Okay, so that's another part that goes into the story. So with that, at Weber, it was a business school. I had the same mentality showing up to college that I had in high school. Didn't matter what I majored in. I just wanted to run. So they were like, hey, these are the majors. And I was like, all right, marketing seems simple. Check marketing. And then I took microeconomics, and I started learning about the market and how the market functions, how society functions and business functions. And I was like, hey, I think I want to major in economics. So I switched my major to economics. And then a year into my economics degree is around the time I started coaching. And then I'm coaching, and I'm like, yo, I think I could coach after I'm done running, and really, really have fun. What degree do you get when you're a coach? You know what I mean? And at first it's like, yo, sports management is what you get. And I'm like, well, they say it's more for an athletic director. I don't want to be an athletic director. I want to be one of the best coaches in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So to do it, you have to understand it. And then that's where exercise science came in. And I'm not sure which one of my friends pointed me in that direction, but I thank them for it every day. Exercise science is incredibly hard or incredibly easy, depending on what your study habits are.
Yes.
But it is incredibly fun. In every class that you go in that major, you learn something that you will carry for the rest of your career when it comes to human performance. And so that was really big for me. So I got my AA degree from Broward College. That's actually that back there on the wall. And then I went to UNF with the intent to finish my bachelor's degree in exercise science. I didn't get into their exercise science program, so I switched to sport management, I believe. And then I started school there. And then I was just a knucklehead, and I didn't finish school there. And when I came back here, it was like, hey, go to FAU, finish your degree. But I got wrapped up in coaching and being a little irresponsible and stuff like that. So I didn't finish there. And I got wrapped up in jobs and all kinds of other stuff, just reality, really.
Yeah.
And I still haven't finished my degree. So that's what I'm doing now. I am tentatively finishing my degree in the next year. We'll see.
Hey, that's good stuff, because I mean, it's hard to finish it once you have so many mishaps and things happen, and a lot of people get thrown off. They're like, well, I don't really need this, but I think that's important. So you're continuing to get your degree in exercise science,
Yes.
And that's huge as a coach, because I've met a lot of coaches, and I just feel like they never understand anything about athletes' bodies and workouts, and I feel like they try and be the trainer when the trainer is there to do their job, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think for me, exercise science was just it was something that was interesting. It made me enjoy learning again. I've always been really, really good at learning things. I really, really value education. It's just the way that I was taught. Those were things I weren't interested in, if that made sense.
Yeah.
So I couldn't give all my attention to it. But when I got to a point where I started to find things that I liked and things that I loved, I dove so deep into it. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, hey, I can open a book, on just on energy systems, and I can read it for 3 hours. And, there are people that are looking at me like, what's wrong with him? But that's what that's what you're passionate.
Yeah, that's what happens when you find a passion. Like, for one, I can like already see coaching is like your life, and
Right.
that's something that you make every day. Like, one of these things, like, hey, I have to master my craft, so let's learn something new today. And like, I feel like that's one of the main reasons why I came on this podcast. You got to learn from wherever you can.
Right. I mean, I'm big on learning, period. There may be something I say here that may spark something in another coach, and it may bring an idea out of them that comes back to me, and then I go a step further. And I'm big on that. That's what coaching is about at certain levels.
Yeah. So, okay, so Ryan, I know you wanted to talk about your first encounter with Coach Josh.
We talked about.
Yeah, so we're kind of transitioning here from just talk about our relationship now with you and
Mhm.
how we came to learn about you and meet you and all that stuff. So,
We
Ryan,
talked about it last week, me and Coach Josh, but it's funny because like with him and like I didn't even know he didn't get his bachelor's. When you talk to him, you think he has a PhD in exercise or whatever. Like, the
Yeah.
man's really smart, and it's funny because like, I mean, I told Garrett like I never liked Coach Josh the first 2 years. Like I didn't like it at all.
I love the honesty.
And I don't even know. I don't even. I know I did. I think I know I followed you on Instagram, and I remember like I DM'd you like something like educational, like a podcast, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, check this out. And then I was like, oh shit, this is really good. And it was the Facebook Coaches Club, and it was like one of the best resources I got. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna send something better. And I sent you something. I sent you like 4 articles, and you're like, well, guess what? I'm gonna send you 100 articles on coaching. And I was like, damn. And then like I sent you something on top of that, and then you just like every time I tried helping you out, you just helped me out like 50 more times more than I could have done. And I mean, I didn't like Coach Josh just because I was like, he just got talented runners. Like he just got talented. Like that's the only reason why he's good. And then talking to him and helping me out much as he's done the past, like, I guess since coronavirus, I realized, and I've told Garrett, I think Coach Josh is the best distance coach in Broward County. I mean, I don't know any other coaches like, in the state, but I definitely think Coach Josh is the top distance coach in Broward.
Definitely one of the top coaches in the whole state, period.
Yeah.
I definitely would not take that title as top distance coach in Broward County, because my mentors would definitely they would drag me out into the street. But I definitely appreciate that. I could argue that there are better coaches in Broward that just aren't talked about.
We can pause it.
Yeah, pause for 1 second. I have to figure out which one of my nieces and nephews are like. Okay. See, I knew that was gonna happen.
It's okay.
But I definitely wouldn't take that title. I think that belongs to Mr. Davidson Gill at Dillard. He was an amazing runner at Clemson. He continues to turn out amazing runners, and he has hands down the best cross-country record it's an unofficial record, but it's the one that I think is the dopest. His daughter actually ran cross-country her first season and won a state title in that season. So until somebody tops that, like
that's a lot. And
right,
you've done a lot coaching-wise in 1 year. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a kid go from, well, I mean, obviously I have, but like, you coach a guy from 18 flat to 16 flat in 1 year.
We'll get into
that's insane. But I just wanted to reference that. Like,
I get it. I just do like Jeremiah Whitfield over at Cardinal Gibbons does amazing things. Dawn Span, whatever school she's at, whether she was at Hollandale, Boyd Anderson, wherever, she's done amazing things. I can argue that at times, they're like, if you've ever watched Trisha's entire body of work at St. Thomas Aquinas, it is like amazing. Like, it's really hard to top. Like, there are some really good coaches here. To even be in the conversation with those guys, for me, is just
I think you at least deserve that. You at least deserve that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. That the funny part is, I have a group of friends. Ryan's met some of them. Coach Smiley. He was at Dillard right now. Coach Jarrell, he's at Cypress Bay. The Quamley, he's at North Miami. Him and Coach Whitfield, we all have like a little breakfast club group of guys, and they always say the same thing. Josh, you gotta stop. You really gotta stop like doubting yourself. You are just as good as these other coaches, and you have to accept that. And for me, it's like, I got more work to do because I'm never satisfied. You know what I mean?
And it's hard. I mean, I'm always hard on myself too, and I think that's a good trait to have because you never want to be complacent and be happy with what you have. And you always, like I said, you always want to find something that you can perfect your craft even more and master your craft even more. So, I mean, that goes without, like, that goes for anybody. Me as a runner, you as a coach, Ryan as a coach,
Which
So.
That was literally gonna be one of my questions later on, which is doubting yourself. And I think it's good. Like for me, like I'll start doubting myself, and then I'll go on like a all-nighter studying on something, how to be better as a coach or whatever. How do you, I don't say how you balance, but like when do you tell yourself like I am a good coach, and then how you like, well, I gotta be better? Because I mean, yeah, I deal with that to a day-to-day basis.
For me, it's tricky. I never actually come out I think I've said it twice in the 10 years that I've been coaching, or almost 11 now. I think I've said I was a good coach twice. Once my first year, I had a 400 runner. He's now the assistant coach at Allen Community College, or the head track coach or something like that. I'm unsure. Dwight Davis, he was a really good 400 meter runner in Broward County. And I was like, hey, I'm a good coach, like after my first season. And now looking back at it, that was incredibly ignorant of me to say, like, first season, like, yo, I can do this. This is easy. But then it was the years where there were a bunch of good kids that were hardworking, that didn't show a super amount of talent, that ended up being successful. That was the second time I was able to say, hey, I'm a good coach. And that was a couple years later, in like 2012 or so, I think, when I was at Fort Lauderdale the first time. It was like, hey, it wasn't because of one successful kid. It was the body of work that year. It was, so I became more obsessed with the body of work for the entire team. So when I start to doubt myself, I'll go on to TFERS, Florida TFERS, or MileSplit, or whatever database or whatever it is, and I'll look at my entire roster, right? And I'll see any kid that's been there for 2 years, and I'll see what they started at and what they're running now. And to this day, I don't think there's been a kid in my program since I got to Fort Lauderdale that has not improved steadily every year. And then I go back to my saying, men lie, women lie, stats don't. So if the numbers say that you're a good coach, then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not just the talented kid. It's not the kid at the top. It's the kid at the bottom and the kid in the middle. And, in the bottom 25%, if everybody's getting better, then you're doing something right. You just have to continue that path, but never get complacent. I could win states for the next 7 years, and I'm going to have the attitude of Coach Carmen Jackson at Miami Northwestern. Okay, we won. Let's go back and let's figure out how to win again, because if that's the standard that we have to live up to, then that's what we have to do. So if you do that, I mean, I think it's a little bit easier to do it. Just remember to check your ego at the door, always, and keep working, because you're only as good as what you've done recently. What you did last year doesn't matter.
Yes. And also, I mean, I think this is a good little saying that my coach always tells me, and to tell myself is every day is just another brick in the wall. Can't get too happy, overconfident about one workout, and you can't get too down if you have a bad workout, you know. Every day is just another brick in the wall, and that's how you got to treat it. So.
But you do think you are a good coach, though, right?
Yes, I mean.
Okay, yeah, because I know you
number three.
Yeah, because I'll say it for you are, like I said, you are one of the best coaches. So I know you got to be humble on the podcast, but
yeah, if you don't recognize it, there are plenty of people that do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kind of start transitioning into your coaching, like more in depth into your coaching career then. So first and foremost, what kind of like training philosophies do you hold? Like, for example, like what kind of mileage per week do you guys do? Are you more of like a, like, how do you train your guys on like a weekly basis, basically?
Okay, so training philosophy is very simple. We get better by the day. So kind of like what you were saying, brick by brick, you know, brick by brick, building a wall that no one can break, you know. I like to be very, very close to race shape as soon as possible and constantly get better throughout the season. So I think of myself first and foremost as a track coach, not a distance coach, not a sprint coach, not a hurdle coach, whatever the case may be. I've coached it all now. And my philosophy at first, when I first started coaching, was, you know, short to long. That's the way it's always been done. That's what I was taught. That's what we're going to do. You know, now we may adjust based on who you are, but whatever the case may be, we're going to go short to long. And then I met Brooks Johnson one day at a National Training Center meet under a tree. He's sitting there under a tree. And if you don't know who Brooks Johnson is, he is probably one of the most influential coaches in the country at the moment, because he is taking his time to mentor a lot of different coaches every week on informal calls and stuff like that. And I try my best to attend every time I can. But he had a book out. I read it in the library. I checked it out in the library, and I was reading it at the time when I was at UNF. And he had topics on coaching every single event, you know. And I was reading the distance chapter, and none of it made sense to me, right? So he's like, hey, you know, his philosophy is speed first. Speed kills those who don't have it. And I was like, all right, you know, that's common sense, because if you're slow, you're slow. You know what I mean? A turtle's not eating a rabbit in a straight up race. It's just not happening. And I asked him about it. And one, he's very blunt. If you've ever been on a call with him, you know he's not shy about using any of those unforgivable words, I guess you should say.
Yeah, he'll say anything.
Yeah, he curses like I do, like a sailor sometimes. And he was just like, hey, well, what do you think it means? You know? And I'm like, hey, man, could you sign the book or whatever the case may be? And one, it was a library book, so I don't know why I had him autographing UNF's library book, but that's incriminating right there. But I had him autograph the library book, and so we read it. You know, I read it, and then I started to understand it was kind of like a different philosophy. It wasn't necessarily short and long, but it was, you know, focusing on making them faster. And in turn, as their speed reserve gets a little bit better, they start to get more efficient. And efficiency is key. At the same time, while I was learning how to coach, I was watching David Rudisha run, because I'm an 800-meter runner, first and foremost at my heart, and that is my favorite event to coach, is the 800. And if you've ever watched David Rudisha run, you can say he is probably the most efficient runner that you've ever seen.
Yes.
So I focus on efficiency. I focus on speed. I can give you an estimate, but I've never had a kid that I've coached ever run over 65 miles a week. That's just not something that I wouldn't say that I don't believe in. I just don't do, unless I believe that they're 32 5K guy first, then they may approach the 65 marker. But some of my top guys, probably won't go over 50. And even if we do approach 50, we're not going 50 back to back to back to back. We may hit it for 3 weeks, and then we might start to come down for a little bit.
And I mean, in high school, I think it's a good thing to not push those guys over that limit, because you can really burn them out. And
right,
yeah,
I believe in having something for them to go to in college. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I've seen so many kids over the years run amazing times in high school, right? And you're like, yo, this kid's gonna run 43 seconds when they get
they run 80 to 90 miles per week,
right,
in high school.
And then they get to college and they can't replicate those times, and everybody's pointing fingers at the college coach, and it's like, hey, well, why can't we look back? Why can't we trace these things back to the beginning and say, hey, what were they doing in high school, and why doesn't it work in college? I know there's other factors. There's those other 21 to 22 hours that the college coach can't control. The kid may be partying, the kid may not be sleeping, the kid may not have proper nutrition, whatever the case may be. But a lot of times these kids come from these programs where they're burnt out by the time they're seniors, and they've been so dominant, on the other side. They've been so dominant that when they get to college where everybody's good, they can't handle not being that superstar. So then they don't want to train, because they're not being catered to. They're not being this or that. So, I believe in having somewhere for them to go to. And as you come to see, I'm happiest when my kids get their goals but not be entirely successful than when they're on top of the mountain, because there's more to gain in the journey up than there is when you're standing on the mountaintop.
Yes. It's hard to, like, for example, a kid wins a state title freshman year.
Mm.
What do you have left to look for,
Right.
And especially if that time was crazy, or, it's hard to keep them hungry.
Right.
So you don't do anything really over 50 miles per week. And I was interested in what you meant by short to long. So does that mean you kind of focus on shorter repeats with longer recovery in the beginning / middle of the season, and then transition into longer intervals, or how does that work?
Well, so if I tell you this, you Garrett, you're probably gonna not believe me. So I think Michael's done mile repeats only twice in his 4 years. And that's including cross and track. And even when we do mile repeats, we won't do more than 3. And he is a cross country guy. I think he's a 15 5K guy. Mm-hmm. But he does better off 300-meter repeats. He does better off 1K repeats. So those are the things that we stick with. Do we progress to longer things? Yes. So if I'll look at it from a progression standpoint. If I want him to run, let's say, 9 flat in the 2 mile, right? We will look at it and say, hey, that's 67 per lap or so, right?
Yeah.
So then we'll figure out where we are. We'll establish a baseline, whatever that benchmark is. We'll train for 4 weeks, and then we'll test. Let's say we do a mile, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he runs 4:40. Then I'll say, hey, this is what your date pace is 4:40 mile pace, and that's what we'll train off of. And we'll start at 600-meter repeats, and then we may progress another week in a couple weeks to 800-meter repeats, and then we may progress to 1K repeats. But we're working that pace, and we're either changing something every week. One of those variables is going to change. The distance is going to increase, the recovery is going to decrease or increase depending on what I want, or the volume is going to increase or decrease depending on what time we are in the season. But we're going to start on the short side and build our way up. Now, he's still going to do mileage. He's going to do his long runs. We're going to build up to I think he's done a 10-mile long run. I think those are what the guys have done at the longest. But then we switch midway into progression runs. So it's like, hey, so we'll do a 10-miler, but then I started to think about it. They're slogging these 10-mile runs. And sometimes that's a good thing. But then they start to have mechanical issues. We started to see injuries. So I changed it to a progression run where I'll say, hey, let's go 45 minutes, 15 minutes at one pace. Then we'll pick up the pace for another 15 minutes, and then we'll pick it up for the final 15 minutes. And they started to feel faster. They started to feel fresher. And they wanted to do those runs because they wanted to see how good they could be and how fast they could do it without going too fast. I'll go and say, hey, we're going to go down to 10K pace. we're not going to go 15 minutes at 5K pace because you're going like 3 miles.
Yeah.
If they're decreasing time, it's giving their bodies time to warm up. It's giving them time to actually feel that run out, and they're feeling faster. And they're kids. They want to be competitive. So it's trying to control their competitive nature in training. So that's how we do long runs. That's kind of what we do in a short to longer approach. There's a speed component every week, every microcycle. There's some kind of speed work that we're going to do. Whether it's 30-meter flies, whether it's accelerations, we're doing that every single week. And then on a normal week, pre-COVID, there's a lot of herd mobility involved, because we don't want to coach runners. I want to coach athletes. If you have that versatility, you're a lot harder to beat. And that's one thing that we learned racing you, Garrett. You have to be versatile. Like, you can't go into a race and run 3 laps and think the race is over at 1400. If it's a 1600-meter race, that critical zone, that last 400, something's going to happen. And, it might be Garrett blowing by you the last 80 meters, but you have to prepare for that. So you go back, you learn from those mistakes, and you go back and you fix it. You find something, you add it to the program, see how it works, and then go from there. The program's ever evolving. It's never the same thing year to year.
Yeah.
So I never feel bad about like saying, hey, what'd you do last year? Okay, here's everything. I'll just throw it at you. It doesn't mean we're going to do it this year.
Yeah.
But some of those elements are going to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, hurdle mobility, strengthening. So you do all that stuff, to just try and keep the muscle imbalances low and just keep those, I guess, fast twitch fibers, rolling. Because, I mean, you were saying that, like, you don't really do too much mileage, but, I mean, you do enough to where it's like you're doing 45, 50 miles a week, but you got to kind of keep those fast twitch fibers going. So,
right.
Yeah. So, okay. So quick question. How do you manage? Okay. We talked about boys this whole time. How do you manage coaching girls?
Honestly, coaching girls I enjoy that more than I enjoy coaching boys. The attitudes are different when you're coaching girls. The emotions you go through are definitely different. But once you get them to buy in and you get that trust, you're able to get them to do incredible things. I've coached some incredible girls throughout my career. And then I've coached some girls that I wish I could have a do-over with. And that's at every level. I remember working with Deshawn Spann her freshman year, and she had just came off of 211 as an 8th grader. And she told me what her high school goals were, and she's like, hey, this is what I want to run before I leave high school. And I said, hey, well, we're going to make a plan and we're going to attack it, and watching her that year train and progress through the workouts that we were doing that some of the boys couldn't do was incredible. But then on the backside of it, it was like, hey, how do I keep her from overtraining? So it's like I was baiting her and I shouldn't have. And then in other days I was a little hard when I shouldn't have been. So, with girls, you kind of have to manage that balance. I think one of the lessons that I've learned recently is that a girl, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm just learning this, is that a girl can do just about as much as a guy can do, if not more. The paces and stuff like that may change a little bit.
Yeah.
But those girls are incredibly tough. And it's something I had to reflect upon and learn. So I don't treat them any different. I actually train them harder because I know they can go harder. But I'm just mindful, and I try to communicate more with girls because they tend to shy away from telling you how they really feel because of the gender difference. Whereas like if you have a female coach and you're a guy, you may not tell your coach how you really feel, So trust is way more important in that aspect. It's like, hey, I need you to trust me because we're trying to get somewhere. And the only way we're going to get there is if there's complete honesty. Honesty has to be at the forefront of those types of relationships, any coach-athlete relationship.
So you spoke about how, like, some days you'd push them hard. Like, sometimes you'd push Deshaun too hard, and then sometimes you baby her. And that kind of relates back to one of my questions that I was going to ask you. What difficulties do you think you face coaching, like, throughout the years, like, that are kind of common throughout the years? Like, so you've been coaching 10 years. Like, what are a couple of problems that you face, like, usually every year, just with coaching to your potential?
Which before you answer it, you were telling me the other day about Forrest. Like I thought that was a really interesting example because like I have the issue where kids can't go to practice every day. Like I just if you could say on the podcast, I thought it was really interesting.
Okay, cool. So so like Forrest Adams, or maybe I shouldn't say his name, but I coached a guy last year. He was a freshman. He was an incredibly talented eighth grader. 447 miler, 208, 800. And he had a choice of going to a private school or coming to us. And somehow we went out. Like, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know how we went out. Because even his parents admitted that they weren't sure, like, if that was the right decision when they first got there. Like, I don't know, that coach might not know what he's doing. He may just be lucky, you know. So I sat down with them and kind of got to know him because he was a little different from the other guys. And to say that on a cross-country team, that's saying something because they're normally weird kids. I can say that. I can say that because I was a cross-country kid. But so with him, it was like, hey, you know, coach, I'm going to come to practice. And then he doesn't show. So then I had to communicate with his dad. His dad is like, hey, well, he won't be there as much as everybody else. Let's kind of figure out when he's going to, like, when we can make this work. So it was like, hey, we're only going to get him 2 days a week. So it's like, all right, coach, if you can only get him 2 days a week, what can he do on those other 3 days that will help him stay on the path, you know? And then what do you have to do these 2 days to get him forward from where he is right now?
Yeah, and 2 days, like, coaching an athlete 2 days, like, I don't really know too many athletes that could progress off of just 2 days of training with their coach, you know?
Well, I mean, the type of athlete that you are, if you want to be successful, you're going to find a way. And with this particular athlete, he found a way because he wanted to be just as good as the other guys on the team. You know, he would come in and he has incredible foot speed. You would never know it. The way he runs is just like he just has a long, beautiful stride. And it's not a stride that you would think a sprinter would have, but I think he has incredible 400-meter potential. And so it was like, hey, I need to maximize that on the days that he's here. And then I need to get his dad to commit to, you know, kind of taking him out and just saying, hey, you know, 3-4 miles on these days, or make sure he's doing his core work, or make sure, you know, he just tries to attempt this general strength circuit and fit it in. And he was able to run 2 minutes, and that was a 7-second PR. So I was really happy with that. He kind of regressed in the 1600, but that let me know that he wasn't doing all the mileage that I said to do. So it was kind of like, all right, so I know what he's not doing. So now next year we can go back and fix that again. And then he kind of bought in a little bit more, and his parents bought in, you know, and they were like, hey, well, we'll get him there 3 days, you know. So then the next year he ran a cross-country PR. And then we were looking toward track season. And then that's when COVID hit, when we were kind of working through track season. He ran a 400-meter personal best, and then COVID hit. And then, unfortunately, his parents, because of COVID, decided to move out of the state. And they said they would be back when the COVID cases kind of died down. So we'll see.
That won't be anytime soon.
Exactly. So, you know, I'm reaching out to his parents like, hey, you know, we were under 5% for like 2 days.
Oh, man. So you touched on, okay, so that was one of the problems. And you were saying, you know, year by year, you kind of keep a track of like what works for your athletes. Do you log this stuff? And like, do you have like any, like, do you keep track of this stuff, or is it just kind of like based off memory?
A little bit of both. I am type A with some things when it comes to certain types of training, like especially with my sprinters, because I had to learn sprints. I I will type every single microcycle to the T. And they'll all be in a folder, and I'll see everything that works. I'll record their personal best. I'll say, hey, this is where they were at the 200-meter mark in the 4. This is where, they were here at 250, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And then with the distance runners, I'm a little bit more lax, not saying that I don't record it, but I'm a lot more flexible. I'll write a blueprint. It'll have every day of training from the start of our season to the finish. And then I'll plug in the meets, I'll plug in workouts. And then when the week comes, I'll go and I'll say, all right, we ran well last week, but they were a little tired, so we'll adjust, and those are coming from experience. So I'll ask my kids every day before we start practice, how do you feel? Did you sleep well last night? Did you eat? Because I've learned that from bad mistakes. I've had kids show up to meets not eating, and bad things have happened. So in order to prevent those things, we've gotten better, Yeah. So these are mistakes that I've learned. And I think if I wasn't at Fort Lauderdale High School here, I wouldn't have the time to learn these mistakes, because if you rush, and let's say I'm at a private school or somewhere that I wasn't an athlete at, that I don't have that super level of support that I have, yep. I might have been out in 2 years. They're like, hey, this guy's doing too much. Like, we're going to go find somebody else, but I'm allowed to make mistakes. And then at the same time, I'm hard on myself. So I learn from them really quickly. It's like, hey, we got over that hump, but we can't do that again.
Yeah. And that's huge that you have, the support from your AD and, most of your parents and stuff, because I know a lot of coaches that, like Ryan, for example, he kind of deals with a little trouble from his AD, and it can affect you as a coach, because you can't, some meets you want to go to and you think your athletes can perform very well at, they can't go to it, or their parents won't take them. And it's just outside factors affecting your coaching, as well as the athlete. So
go ahead, Ryan.
I'll say, how many issues do you have with parents?
A ton.
Really?
I have issues with parents, mostly because it's we're in South Florida, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're in South Florida, you have a lot of programs, and kids can go anywhere, Mm-hmm. So you'll have one program promising a kid, hey, I can get you to a state championship in a year if you just transfer over here, and then I'm in the business of saying, hey, you'll get better here.
Yeah, that's not, I was going to say, that's so flawed. You can't.
Right. Like what sounds better, what sounds more honest. You know what I mean?
So a parent, though, the state champion, yeah, it's going to sound a lot better.
It's going to sound a lot better. So, they're going to come to me and say, well, hey, they promised me a state championship at X school. Why can't we, what are we getting over here at Y? And I'll say, well, hey, this is one of the best academic public schools in the state of Florida. Let's start with that, because like I told you guys earlier, I wasn't that superstar student athlete. I was just an athlete student. I was athletics first. But I've changed, so that's first and foremost. And I'm like, hey, high school diploma from here means something on a college application, because they know what this program stands for. Mm-hmm. They know what we do here. And then I'll go and I'll say, well, didn't you check the numbers? There hasn't been a kid that doesn't progress here, because that's what I take pride in, But I'm beyond that point of making promises, because I've done that before, and I haven't lived up to those promises. And those were times where I had to eat crow. I had to sit there and say, well, I'm sorry. I made this promise, but we didn't meet that expectation. So I've learned from that, and it's like I'm not gonna do everything to convince you to come here if your only goal is to make your kid look better. If you want your kid to be a better person when they go out of here than when they come in, athletically, personally, emotionally, academically, then I'm going to always be a good choice. But if you're just looking at the athletic side, I can't support that. because at the end of the day, it's not hard for me to make a 520, 1600 guy better. That's something that, I can say that I can do. But if you're only thinking about that side, at some point you're going to fail. You know what I mean? Like whether it's here, whether it's in college or something, you're going to fail. And I can't be a part of that. I need to set you up for success in life.
And if these parents have, like, obviously they probably have aspirations for these kids to eventually run in college. And,
right.
What parent doesn't want that for their athlete? And some of those schools won't set them up with the entire package. They'll just set them up with the athletic standpoint. And I think that was very huge that you brought that up. Like, in college for track and field, I don't know if any of the listeners, listening right now know, but academics is really where you're getting most of your money from, because we don't have that much money in our sport. And being well-rounded as an individual, even your people skills, that matters a lot on visits, and that could play a role whether you'll get X amount of money too. So
right. Some of the best programs are more concerned with what type of person you are than what you can do for them athletically.
Yes.
The reality is, if you are a good athlete, you are one of many. If you're a good athlete and you're a good person, you're almost one of one. So that's the kid they're going to pick up, and that's the kid I would pick up, because I have conversations with kids all the time that say, hey, coach, I want to run track. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I ask them, certain questions just to gauge them. It doesn't mean I turn them away, but it lets me know how serious they are about wanting to be the best. Do you really know what it takes to make the Olympics? You're going to hear that all the time as a coach. Like, hey, coach, I want to win the states. I want to do this. Are you prepared to sacrifice what you're going to have to sacrifice to get there?
And that's another reason why I don't think you can make those promises either as a coach. And I don't think that's fair, because it all depends on the athlete. That's where the success stems from. Like, you can do all you can as a coach, but if the athlete's not bought in, there's nothing. There's no success,
Right. And, we all know that there are coaches that do that, that will tell kids, hey, you can do this here. And I've lost out on good athletes that come back years later and say, hey, we were going to go to your school, but we chose to go somewhere else. And that's okay. I think you can't get hung up on those things. I think you can only do what you can control. I think that's really, really big. That's one of the lessons I had to learn. Control what you can control. Because there are meets that I wanted to go to that I couldn't go to. There were championships that I wanted to win that I had to say no for the greater good of the team. Like, hey, like, we can't spread our kids too thin. There's certain lessons that you learn that you either learn the hard way, or you learn when somebody else makes that mistake and you try not to do it, Yeah. So I'm like really big on like, hey, Ryan, don't do this.
Oh, man. Yeah, and that goes with anything. Like I said, just life, period. You always want to, you as a coach, like, the fact that you're helping out Ryan just shows how you are, like, how good of a person you are individually, because a lot of coaches, not a lot of coaches, but there's certain coaches that won't go the extra mile to help out their peers. And I think that just makes you an even better coach, because it makes Ryan a better coach, which makes his athletes better. And then, you have a lot of athletes that are training at a high level, and that can set, that can set them up for success. The better everybody's athletes are, the better they're going to run, and the better it is going to be for everybody.
Right. So, I believe in the best competition possible. I thrive on it. I think that in certain cases, you're only going to see special marks when everybody's competitive. I think the best example of that is the 400-meter world record with Wade Van Niekerk, Karani James, LaShawn Merritt, and all those guys in that race. Brooks makes it no secret that he was training LaShawn Merritt around that time, and he told Wade Van Niekerk's coach, like, hey, we were training to run 43.5, and we lost because you ran 43.4, but we're going to train to run 43 flat. and you're going to have to come see us next year. I'm paraphrasing because, of course,
Oh yeah.
Brooks is like 88, so I don't think he said you're going to have to come see us. But so, you go back the next year, and Wade's coach and Brooks, they sat down and they said, hey, these are the marks that you need to hit to break that 400-meter world record. Let's both train for it. And the result, history tells itself. Wade Van Niekerk broke the world record. He went 43.03. Now, that is a testament to itself. Collaboration between good coaches, led to a new world record. And I think that if we have more collaboration, we could see really, really special things along the way. I'm only the coach that I am because, there are coaches before me that reached out. There are coaches that continue to reach out. And when I reach out to a coach, they aren't, some coaches aren't shy. Some coaches don't reply to emails, but either way, like I've received emails from Carol Smith-Gilbert about sprints. I've received really great emails from Mike Holloway, from so many different coaches. Like I can't even begin to name them all. Camilla Kingston, she's in Detroit, Michigan. Most people don't know her name, but she's an amazing coach. Any coach that you can think of, I probably reached out at some point, because that's how you get better. It can be the dumbest question in the world. Like I remember sitting on a phone call with Vince Anderson, and I was just asking him questions, and it was literally whatever came up to my head. It was word vomit in a sense, but I had to get him out. You know what I mean? I had to ask whatever came to my head, because maybe in that conversation, I could learn something, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And he might have learned something from me. I doubt it, because he's like the wicked genius. But I learned from these guys, and I hope that it encourages other people to take the time out to reach out to other people and do it. That's what Coaches Collab is about. That's what coaches education is all about. The sport will die if everybody could just takes their secrets to the grave with them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying, that just makes you a better coach is what I'm trying to get at, because there are some coaches that are great and they keep their secrets to themselves, but I don't think it should be that way, because if everybody's running faster, then we have more possibility to do special things,
Right.
So I know Ryan was waiting to talk about this.
Because I think it's actually interesting though, because like your high school times were good. They weren't, state champion or anything like that.
Yep.
And we were just talking about you want to be a college coach one day. What, like, because even me, I wasn't the greatest high school. I didn't even run for college. What do you do to, because like you have USATF level, I don't know what, you got everything. But like, just talk about like all those other classes you've taken, and like you're meeting all these coaches, and like you, at the end of the day, trying to be a college coach, which I'm guessing that's your ultimate goal.
Okay, so correction. Ultimate goal personally is to be arguably the best 800-meter coach in the world. I don't know what path it takes to get there. Per se, it's just, constantly producing good athletes in those disciplines and trying to get better. Year in, year out, day in and day out. However, I have to get better and doing it the right way. That's the key. I always wanted to win a national championship in college. So I figured I'd be a college head coach, just like I always wanted to win a high school state championship. And I never got the chance to do it as an athlete. So I was like, hey, the next best thing to do is do it as a coach. And I've been close. Like I've been on the cusp for the last 3 years. So I was like, yo, we got another shot. Let's try and take it. And then so naturally progression from high school is to college. That's the dream. But with college athletics comes a lot of sacrifices. So, I have to be mindful of those things. Like, there's a time commitment that has to be there. There's the moving, and the fact that, hey, you never know when a job is going to open, and you never know where it's going to be, but you have to take those opportunities if it fits you. If that's the opportunity that you see, that's the opportunity you have to take. And you're going to do some things you're not going to want to do when you get there, but you have to do whatever is necessary to keep that spot, because there are thousands of coaches just like me that want that opportunity. You know what I mean? So that is the goal ultimately. I think that it is something that is obtainable really, really easily. And like I said to you guys earlier, reaching out to coaches is the easiest way to meet them. I've had phone conversations with Vince Anderson multiple times. He is one of the best coaches to reach out to because he set aside blocks of time to have conversations. And I know for a fact that if you reach out to Coach Holloway, he's more than willing to, respond. A lot of coaches are. Coach Mann at Florida is. Honestly, we have to stop looking at coaches as if they're on pedestals. Like Coach Lamont Johnson at Johnson C. Smith in North Carolina said that really well. He's like, at some point, somebody's going to have to go after Mouse. Somebody has to go after the top, like Coach Harder at Arkansas. The dominance that they display in cross country, somebody has to try and take them down, So they're human, Yep. So the only way we get there is by reaching out to these guys and talking to them and breaking into circles that we think we don't have access to, because we are just as good or we're on our way,
Which I even put you at a certain pedestal, being the coach you are. I mean, listen, I'm starting at the very, very bottom. I'm not, but like I even put you at a pedestal, and I mean, you're pretty open to, yeah, you've obviously helped me a lot. What certifications do you have? Because I know you have a bunch.
Okay. I got my USATF level 1 in 2010. I think that was like my first year coaching or second year, something like that. Then after that, I took my technical certification from USTFCCCA. That was like the only one that they had out. And at the time, pretty much every certification that they were offering in class was at the convention. So it was like, hey, I have to catch a flight and pay for a class and pay for a hotel to get this certification. And I was like, seems like a lot. And then I think it was 2015, I think, because the name tag is like hung up on my wall for my first convention. It was an amazing experience. I went there and I got my program management certification. And then that's where I met Coach Boo. And, they kind of explained the importance of coaches education, because before it was kind of like, hey, I just want to learn, I just want to do it. And then while I was at the convention, I met some really good coaches who kind of, saw me talking on the, sitting on the corner at lunch, and I was just eating by myself, and there's like hundreds of coaches everywhere at tables, like sitting and talking, and they're looking at me like, what's wrong with that guy? So like, is he about to cry or anything? Like, I'm like alone kid in the
cross-country runner.
and so they invite me over to their table, and we sit down and we talk, and then I got to see the human side of coaches, and they're like, yo, after the symposium tonight, we're playing spades in this room, and we're going out to the bar downstairs at this room. Hang on one second. But yeah, so they, I saw the human side, and that's what kind of dove me into coaches education. So I got, after that, I got my sprint, hurdle, and relay specialist certification, weight training for track and field, sports psychology certification from USTFCCCA, and now I'm actually in the middle of my speed and power sports science class, so that I can get my master's endorsement in long sprints. So I'm working on that, and then USATF level 2 endurance is in the plans at some point in the next year, and hopefully then my master's endorsement in middle distances. So I am like deep into this coach's education thing, because if I see it as an investment. Like, yeah, I'm probably spending like maybe $2,000 or $3,000, but that'll probably be a bonus one year.
Yeah, exactly.
When it all comes down to it, if I'm doing things the right way, I'm committed to working hard and just trying to do whatever's necessary to make it to whatever my individual pedestal is, or, you know.
Yeah, definitely far from just a distance coach. Like I literally, before this year, I literally did not know you needed that many certifications or like needed any certifications at all to like coach at the college level. And the fact that you're like working on all those certifications to be well-rounded as a coach, and it's like your philosophy with your runner. You don't want to just be like good at one event. You want to be great at everything, you know.
Well, and not necessarily great. And one thing I don't want you to confuse, you don't necessarily need the certifications. I believe that they are important, though. You really just need a bachelor's, and if you have collegiate coaching experience, that's a plus. You know, for me, I don't have the Division I coaching experience, so I download the Division I track and field rule book every year, and I comb through that, you know, as if I am a college coach, so that when that day comes, you know, I'm prepared for that opportunity, so that, you know, people will think it's luck. I'll just think it's preparation meeting that opportunity at the middle, you know. And then when it comes down to training them, you know, it's about being versatile in a range. Like for an 800-meter runner, I think that to be the best 800-meter runner that you can be, you need to be good enough to have confidence to compete in the 200, but then also good enough that, hey, if I need to run a 3K, I can compete in that too. You know, you may not be stellar at the 3K and stellar at the 200. You're not making the NCAA final, but
Yeah.
you're going to be able to hold your own at invitational. You know what I mean? And if you can do those things, why don't you have the confidence to, you know, run a first lap for a female in 57 or 58 seconds and separate yourself from everybody else in the NCAA or everyone else in the world, you know?
Um,
Yeah, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, because the first two episodes we've done have been distance runners, and both of them, there was a reason why they're one of the top distance runners in their high school. And just off what you were just talking about right now, there's a reason why you're one of the best coaches. Was there a coach, or like how did you know, like, I gotta do all of these things to be the best coach I can possibly be?
I don't think there was any coach that said, hey, you need to take all these classes. There definitely wasn't. I think for me, it was one of those things where it was like, yo, I need an edge, because I looked at things from a realistic perspective. I'm not a professional track athlete. You know, my name doesn't ring bells when you read it. Mm-hmm. If I put a resume on somebody's desk and, you know, a guy that ran for 4 years at XYZ University has his resume and they look similar, who are you going to go with? You're going to go with the name who, when you Google it, you know, it's going to ring something. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, I need an edge. I need to figure out what that is. And then when I got to Fort Lauderdale High School, you know, I was young. So a lot of coaches, you know, that were available didn't want to coach with me. So I had to do most of that stuff myself. So then it was like, hey, well, you know, I'm going to step up to this task. I'm not going to tell the sprinters you can't come out and make this a distance program. I'm not going to tell the distance kids I'm going to ignore you during track season. I'm going to figure out a way to make this work and find success. And then when I had, you know, that first year was just a girls program and we saw success, then I inherited all of the boys that next year. And then, you know, you have this combined program and you're coaching all these events on the track. You need to know what you're doing. You can't do a disservice to these kids. So it's like, hey, the Altus short sprints course, I've done it. I've completed it. You know, the Altus sports course for shot and disc, you know, I'm in the process of doing it because I need to know in order to produce. I can't short service a kid because I did not want to be that kid. I never want to look a kid in the face and have to say, hey, I did the best that I could and lie. You know, I'm going to do the best that I can so that when it's all said and done, it's like, all right, you know, 142 or whatever the case may be, that's the best you're going to do for your career. You know, we had a good run. You know, you can walk away from it and be happy. that's one of the things that I'm most fortunate with. Like I think there's only one exception in the 10 years where I could say, like, I don't think I did my due diligence. Other than that, it's me out there every day trying to get it done. And honestly, my assistant coach, he was with me earlier. We went out to lunch, and he said, like, literally the funniest thing ever is watching you coach on a Tuesday, because you're running from the finish line to the 300-meter mark to the 100-meter mark to, do wickets with the sprinters. And then you go back to 200-meter mark because you're 400 guys over there. And then you got the hurdlers at the 300-meter mark. And then the distance runners are coming around for a lap, and you're trying to beat them over there so you can yell out splits. It is the funniest thing ever. And I'm like, or you could help, But he's got his group. So it's like, when you work hard, your assistants work hard. So they're putting out, product, like really good product, him and my pole vault coach and my jumps coach. And they're putting out good product every year because they see me doing it. And I've learned that lesson from other aspects of life off the track. If people above you work hard, you're going to feel bad if you're not working as hard as them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So obviously one of your goals is to eventually, coach college. Have you had any, opportunities to coach at the next level, or?
I have, the last couple of years, I have gotten a couple opportunities. They came at the wrong times, and I feel bad saying that because there's never a wrong time, because you never know when it's going to come.
Yeah.
But they came where I knew I was on the cusp of something big, and I wasn't 100% invested into the opportunity at the time. And I knew that if I took the opportunities, I would be looking back at the high school and saying, hey, I didn't finish. I need to help these guys. And if I'm not 100% invested in what I'm doing, I don't want to get into it. You know what I mean? Like I never want to like I said, I never want to shortchange someone. And that would go for an employer too. So if a college were to say, hey, we want you to come here and represent our school, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And everything that I do, like the Twitter profile totally changes the moment I sign a contract. You know what I mean? And the colors change. But, right now in my heart, I'm bleeding blue and white. And, I'm doing some special things with some kids there. And I'm planning on finishing it out this year. And once this year is up, then that's when I start to, look at other opportunities possibly. But if they don't come, I'm fully invested in what I'm doing right now. So it's not, a big thing for me.
And yeah, and I think that's just a hard decision to make, because I feel like every other year you kind of get that one athlete where like, hey, like this kid's really talented. I think I need to stay and keep coaching him because I don't want to leave him in the wrong hands and him not reach his potential. But
like you.
What? You agree?
Like you? No, like you.
Like me? Well, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, personally, I think that, it all worked out in the end of the day. But, my senior cross-country year, and life happens, life hits you. And my coach had a job opportunity and he needed to move his life forward. And I understood that, obviously. But, like, it's hard to leave a kid in that position because I was guessing and coaching myself, and Ryan was kind of helping me out. But
that was my internship.
Yeah. But so I guess
for that, by the way, I'm just saying. that you get an A for that internship. That was a really good year.
It was more him teaching me.
Hey, I couldn't tell. I was like, what is he doing? Where did Garrett come from? Like,
it was just more me just patting him on the back and being his number one cheerleader.
And all right, so I guess you would kind of label it as like a year-to-year type thing. Like, I guess you're not on like a 5-year long-term like coaching contract. It's more of like the year ends and you kind of, measure everything out and weigh your options type thing, or?
Well, so So like the last opportunity that I got offered was over COVID. It was actually a couple months ago. And it was a really good opportunity where they were, kind of bringing in a new head coach. And he was really familiar with me. And he was like, hey, Josh, could you come out, come up here and pack everything up and move this way and help me build this program. And I was like, yo, that would be dope. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, let's sit down and weigh the pros and cons of this. Like, hey, you got a couple of talented seniors here. They have the ability to have a really good, solid career. What is the contingency plan? Is there a contingency plan in place for if you were to pick up and leave? Are these kids all right? And part of me is like, hey, you can't hold your life for them,
True.
But then at the same time, I made a commitment to those guys. I gave them my word when they were freshmen, their freshman year at the state meet. I think we ran 8:11 in the 4x8, and we sat in the hotel overlooking the ocean. And that was a
Dang,
joke.
hold up. Y'all got money like that?
that was a rub to Ryan because we talked about that. But our hotel was on Jack's Beach, and I was like I was sitting there and I was like, hey, we have a chance to win a state title next year. And they came in the room and they're like, hey, coach, and the one kid comes and he says, coach, I want to quit football. And I'm like, why do you want to quit football? And he's like, I want to run 47 seconds. And I said, hey, you don't necessarily have to quit football to run 47 seconds. He's like, well, coach, I keep getting hurt. And I said, well, then you need to take better care of your body. And he's like, I don't really want to play football. I said, okay, if you don't want to play football, go tell the football coach that. But it's not going to be me saying, hey, you can't play football anymore. So he decides that, hey, he doesn't love it as much as he loves track. And he wants to run track. So that's his focus. And then the other kid says, hey, coach, I ran a really good mile this year. I want to be better. I want to medal next year. I'm glad that we ran a good 4x8, but I want to do more, and all the kids come and they tell me their goals and stuff like that. And I say, hey guys, if you're committed to doing it, I'm committed to staying. I'm committed to being here as long as you guys are here to see you guys through this. And we had a heart to heart. So I was like, hey, we're going to stick this out. These kids are seniors now. They've progressed really well over high school. And I want to see those guys through. And then at the same time, Fort Lauderdale High has never won a girls' state championship. That is something I'm committed to doing. And I have a really, really talented group of young girls all across the board right now that are sophomores that I want to kind of put them in position. And if I were to get a job, I kind of know who I would bring in to finish the job for me. So I'm not too hung up on them. But at the same time, if the opportunity's not right, I'm going to see that one through too, and then I'm going to go kicking down whoever's door necessary to hey, I'm going to pull out, I'll rake the pole vault mats or I'll rake the grass every day, or I'll sweep the locker rooms if you give me a spot. Let me hold a stopwatch over here, XY University, so I can, get my foot in the door. But there are goals that I set that I want to accomplish first. But hey, for the right school, I'm out.
And obviously one of those talented kids, and he's a pretty good friend of mine. I look at him as a little bro, and
future podcast
Michael,
guest.
Yeah, and probably next podcast guest. So he's super talented, obviously. And how did you exactly approach coaching him, and how have you matured in your coaching career having him as one of your athletes? Because I don't know how many or what athletes you've coached over the years, but he's very talented, and I feel like he's probably one of the most talented runners in the state. So
okay, so we're talking about Michael Fiore, obviously. Yeah. But Michael is a very, very special kid. You can't put into words what he's been able to accomplish for this program, cross and track. Excuse me. But I can say it like this. He's never run before he got to high school, competitively at least. And coaching him was kind of the same as everybody else. His first cross country season. Like, I knew he was special. I never knew how special he was. At least not immediately. By the regional meet his freshman year in cross, I knew he was special. Because his dad said, hey, if he trusts you, he'll run through a wall for you. And that was one of the first things that stuck out in the conversation that we had, the first of many. And I was like, yeah, okay. All parents say that, And by the end of the season, I was fully convinced that kid would actually run through a wall if I asked him to. And he's changed my philosophy when it comes to coaching, because you hear about kids buying in, but you never really see 100% buy-in. And I've never seen it until I've coached Michael Fiore. I've always had kids that bought in to various degrees. But from day one, he bought in literally from his warm-up lap, and he has never wavered. He has trusted me in times where I thought he shouldn't, because he actually got hurt his freshman year during track season. And we me being the coach that I was at the time, I was kind of like managing his injury through the season, because we were in championship season and he had pulled his hamstring. So it was like, all right, you're a miler. You don't really need it. Let's, let's try and figure this out. And he continued to PR with a hurt hamstring. And then we went into the district meet that year, and he ran another PR. And he didn't qualify for regional meet in the mile. And I thought it was my fault. So as a coach, I had to reevaluate what I was doing that year. And I had to come back and say, hey, next year we're going to be better. We're going to be smarter. And we're going to take what we've done this year, and that is going to be a standard. And then we're going to open our season next year better than where we started. And we tried to do that every single year. And I think for the most part, we've been successful. I think in the 3 years, or this is his fourth, in the 3 years that he's been here, we PR'd every single year in just about every event. And that's one of the things, like I said, I take pride in, is showing that we can constantly get better, and that he can continue to push his limits. We ran yesterday the Spanish River Invitational. He ran 15:39 by himself, literally from the gun. And he followed the bike. And then after the race, he was like, Coach, what I run? And I'm like, 15:39. He's like, oh, man, I'm upset. My personal best is 15:38. I said, well, Michael, you're not running with anybody. He said, well, Coach, you said that doesn't matter. I should push it either way. I was like, yeah, you're right. I did say that, So I got to remember what I'm saying, in the moment. But these are the things that we're taught, and that we're teaching, is that we have to keep going, we have to keep seeking goals. And one of the things about him is that I taught him like I was taught: always set a goal, chase after it relentlessly, and then when you get it, set the bar higher. So we've already begun talking about what his goals are for collegiate track. And my job now is to successfully transition him from my program into the University of Florida's distance program, and make sure he's set up for success there, because I believe he can be a champion on a collegiate level. So that's my job.
And I like I said, it keeps coming back full circle. That goes back to you being a good coach, because a lot of coaches would just, look at his success through high school and maybe want him to win like a state championship or whatever, reach the highest goal at the high school level, but maybe not set them up for success, and transition him into what he's going to be doing in college. Because Selinski does a lot of crazy workouts from what I've heard at UF. So I think that's huge, and it differs a lot from your training philosophies in your program, So he's going to be doing a lot more mileage and all that stuff. So
he'll do more mileage. He'll adapt to it. Like me and Coach Selinski had very long talks about during the recruiting process. That's one of the things that I really, really respect him for, because that's a lost art, reaching out to the coach to see what the athlete was actually doing, what made them successful, in order to continue to make them successful.
Yep.
And I think he'll adapt to anything. There are things that we've done this past few months that we hadn't done in years prior. You know, we just started bringing tempos into the training program. We just started bringing longer repeats, like 2K repeats in last year, just to see how they would work. And we couldn't do it as many at first. And, you know, so we went back to 800 meter repeats, but now we're stronger. Now we can do those things. And it was just like, hey, I had to look at his overall training age and say, hey, this kid's only been running this is his 4th year running period, running competitively. And if we want him to go for 8 more years, you know, we need to do it a certain way. We need to be, you know, I wouldn't say meticulous, but we need to take our time and do it the right way. If he doesn't win a state title, it's not going to deter him from winning an SEC championship.
Exactly. Yeah. What looks better, an SEC championship or a state title?
Exactly. There are hundreds. There's 50 states in the U.S. There are 50 state champions. Well, let's say there's
more.
Let's say there's 4 classifications in every state, right? 50 states. There's 200 state champions every year. But there's only one SEC champion every year. There's only one NCAA champion every year. So it's not that it's not important. It's not that we don't care about those things. It's that at the end of the day, we're focusing on getting better as an athlete. Like whatever his mark was last year, we're focused on beating that and lowering it as much as we can. And I've always had a philosophy. It comes from, you know, Coach Whitfield and Coach Spann. When they coached me, it was always put a mark up that no one else can beat. Then you don't have to worry about the other people in the lanes. You just have to do you, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what we always try to do. We try to just run our race and be successful doing the things that we do.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, for example, like, the state titles are insignificant in the long run. Like, I come to CSU never having won a state title, and 3 guys on my team are state champs in their respective class or state. And it's like, well, damn, like, did it really mean that much in high school? Like, obviously everybody wants to be a state champ. It's one of the highest things you can achieve as a high school athlete. But at the end of the day, there are bigger fish to fry, you know?
I'm not discounting a state championship because if that's your goal,
yeah,
that's what you should shoot for. Like don't get me wrong, I wanted to run 144 in the 800 in high school. That, you know what I mean? That makes no sense. You know, I totally disrespected the event when I said that as a freshman.
Yeah.
But you know, those were the things that made me the coach that I am. You know, it wasn't about, you know, just the mark. So, you know, my first 800 I ever ran, I remember it clear as day. I think I ran 227. It was terrible. I think I took the first lap out sub 60, and I crashed and burned because the the number 1 ranked 800 meter runner in the state was my teammate, and he made sure we knew it that day. And I ran 227. And I was, at the end of that year, I was sitting in front of the computer and I was typing it, my goals for the next year. And I was like, I'm running 144 before I leave high school. You know, it didn't matter that I couldn't win a dual meet. It didn't matter that I couldn't win my conference. I knew what the end goal was. So that same philosophy goes with coaching. I never ran 144.
Yeah.
But I kept that mentality. Hey, let's keep getting better, you know, whatever the case may be. So that next year I ran 210. Then that next year after that I ran 204. And then I ran 2 minutes, you know, and then I ran 158. And then I ran, you know what I mean? Like, you get better year after year, and eventually you'll get to a point where you're setting marks. And now that, you know, we're smarter as coaches over the years, now that we're better as athletes over generations, we're going to start to see marks where that's possible. You know, you just have to go back in history to see that there were years ago, you know, we had kids that were 14 years old making Olympic teams. It's not unheard of. So these things that, you know, oh, you can't run these times in high school, that's not unbelievable. It's just a matter of, you know, accepting the fact that there are certain things we have to do it. Certain things we can't do. We can't party. We can't, you know, do those things, but we can be successful.
And so knowing that you have the talented athlete, like, you know, in Michael, how do you push him on like a day-to-day basis? Like, obviously he's got a great training partner in Humberto, but obviously, you know, there's also a time difference in their PRs. How do you push him, you know, just on a day-to-day basis in practice?
Okay, well, so first off, I want to say Humberto Ramirez is incredibly talented. He has not scratched the surface of his talent at all. He is really, 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 really underrated in an aspect. So he is just as capable of running those times as Michael is. The biggest difference that makes it coaching Michael easier is that as I've grown as a coach, I've learned that true motivation is intrinsic. And motivation isn't the best determining factor when it comes to success. It's discipline. And Michael has it in spades. Motivation is a time-to-time type thing. There are days where you're not going to be motivated. There are days where you're not going to want to get up and run an 8-mile run. I'm sorry. Nobody wakes up every day and says, hey, I want to train hard. What separates the good from the great is the discipline to say, hey, I feel like crap, but I'm going to do it anyway, because at the end of the day, you know, this is what's going to put me in a position to be successful. Or let me not say it that way, because I guess people may think I'm trying to stress overtraining. But what I mean is, you know, your coach designs a workout for you. And, you know, he says 80% is 67 seconds or whatever the case may be. This is the pace you're supposed to go for the rep. And you, on number 6, you feel like, oh, I can chill for 6 and 7 and come back on rep number 8 and run well. And the workout will still look good because coach won't know the difference. Most kids do that.
Yeah.
But then there's that select few that run every rep to the best of their ability, and they see those gains. He's one of those kids. I don't have to go out of my way to motivate him. And when I do have to go out of my way to motivate him, then I know something's wrong. Yeah. You know, and that was COVID. That was, you know, saying, hey, we worked 4 years for a state championship, and, you know, they've decided that we're opting out of the state series and you don't get an opportunity to run. So then he says, hey, well, coach, why am I running cross country season? What's the point? And then I say, to prove that you're just as good as these kids, regardless of where you train at, regardless of what course you run on, you're just as good. Prove that point. And, you know, he's done that to an extent.
And that's a whole nother topic we could talk about. That just infuriates me every time I hear that y'all can't compete in the state meet, which it's robbing him of an experience.
It's life. I mean, like, do I want to run? Yes. Do I want to compete for us? Do I want him to compete for a state title? Yes. Are we going to get it? No. So we have to move in the other direction. Mm-hmm. You know, it's as a coach, part of my job is now focusing him on what opportunities we do have, you know, and saying we can still be successful, because at the end of the day, there are times, and track and field is a good example of this, where the number one runner and number one ranked person in the world isn't the Olympic champion. 2016, Kenny Harrison falls in the Olympic trials in the 100-meter hurdles. Crushed. Her coach finds a way to bounce her back. And then a few weeks later, in I think the London Diamond League meet, she sets the world record in the 100-meter hurdles. So who's number one in the world? The Olympic champion or the world record holder? The best to ever do the event. You know what I mean? There are times where that happens. So just because you don't get to go to the big dance doesn't mean the season is over with. And that's a lesson that he learned this year.
Go ahead.
I'll say, you want to do one question each, because I know you're sure on time.
Yeah, and then we'll go with the rapid fire questions.
So our first conversation, I'm pretty sure we ever had, we were talking about how do you know to tell your kids, like after, I remember you told me after a race, you didn't talk to your kids for like, I think it was a state meet, so you didn't talk to them for like a whole day because you didn't know what to tell them. Mm-hmm. How does that, because that's like the most fun part to me as a coach, is like after a race, like, you know, you gotta give them feedback because they're looking for you and that, you know, they're waiting for your response. What is that process like?
So I try not to go into detail
Okay, you
right?
gotta go. Yeah.
I'll ask them for feedback. Like I'll tell them walk me through the race, you know, because there are times where we're in high school, right? So we're doing multiple events. So I'll say walk me through the race, and I ask them how do they feel, and then I'll say, hey, we need to focus on the 4x4. Or we need to focus on the 32 or whatever the next event is, you know, because if it's an 800 guy, he may be on the 4x4. If it's a 1600 guy, he may be in the 32. Or if it's the 4x8, they may have a whole group of events to do that day. You know what I mean? So I'm like, hey, go cool down, jump into Norman Tech, or lay out, get in some AC, whatever the case may be. We need to get prepared for the next event. And then at the end of, I'll write a little bit of notes, or I don't write anymore. I just kind of pull out my phone and jot it down in the note section. And then I'll sit down at the end of the meet and I'll go over the entire meet, because sometimes as coaches, we get in a tendency of saying like, hey, oh, that was a bad race, right? And let's say it was a 1600 and we're like, yo, that was a terrible race. So now what is he going through when he lines up for the 3200? You know what I mean? You're adding pressure. I don't want to do that. So, I try to encourage them and get them through the meet, and then give myself 24 hours to kind of process everything that was going on. Because at first glance, I may not realize that, hey, he ran a really good 800 and he wasn't able to come back on a 4x4, but that was because, they didn't have the wheelchair events that day that we were planning on to give him the extra 10 minutes rest or whatever the case may be. So I process all that, and then I'll go back and I'll say, hey guys, let's have a conversation that next day at practice, or or if it's Sunday, I'll start a group chat conversation and I'll be like, hey, you guys tell me how you felt now that you guys had some time to process it. And now that we processed it, we can have an honest discussion. And I can say, hey, these are the things that we did right. These are the things that we did wrong. And this is how we're going to get better. I never bring something negative to the table without a solution, because I was taught really early not to bring problems, bring solutions.
And it's funny because like you guys mentioning that question, Ryan, like it just made me remember at the state meet when I didn't perform the greatest. Obviously, I had some hamstring issues and my season didn't go how it should have. But I remember I performed really, like, I didn't perform the greatest in the mile, and I didn't have that coach really to come talk to me after my race, and I was just devastated. And I remember you actually came up and you talked to me, and you kind of got my mind back on the right path. Obviously, I didn't process that info till later on in the day, but I don't know. I just thought that was really cool, remembering that. And I didn't really even know you that well back then. So I just think that it was that was like a really, cool moment.
I mean, at the end of the day, in that situation, I typically try not to do those things, because like you are running for another program. Yeah. But I did know your head coach, and I knew all the issues that you were going through your senior year. So I felt I was really empathetic, and I was like, hey man, I know that's hard, because this is a 4:16 miler that should have been able to win this race.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I know how devastating that is. Being in mile situations where there are races that I should have won that I didn't win, and I know how hard it is. And I saw you. Look, I got to get this kid back up, because he's going to, the worst thing to ever hear is like, hey, Garrett's not running anymore, or whatever the case may be. Because I think that, you are a talent, and this sport needs kids like you. Yeah. So, whatever I can do to keep you on that path, that's what I had to do that in that moment,
Yeah, and that, like I said, like that helped me a lot, because like in the moment I was like, dang, like I really I didn't have it, I didn't have it that day. And I remember you just telling me like, hey, like you have a whole college career ahead of you, and you have a lot more to worry about on the future, like pick it up and keep going, pick your head up and stuff. And like I said, that makes you a better coach, because you didn't have to do that, but you did it. And that just, like I said, it makes you a better coach.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate that a lot. But yeah, so with that, we're gonna wrap this podcast up and just do our all-out kick round. Obviously, we like to ask some fun questions. You can answer them as fast as you want. It doesn't matter. But we just like to have a couple rapid fire questions.
All right,
So,
let's do it.
all right. So the first question is, what's your favorite track event to run?
Oh, 800 without a doubt.
Okay.
You can answer. You can answer, Gary.
Yeah. All right. And then, what's your favorite track event to watch?
So, all right. So, two events. Both of them are exciting to watch, and both of them are the same. So for me, watch and run for both. So now I'm backtracking a little bit. The 800 and the 4x4. So if I'm participating, I really, really, really love running the 4x4. For the team aspect and the excitement of, running somebody down as an 800 runner, like that's the moment where you feel fast.
Yeah.
And then watching it, dude, like if YouTube recorded how many times I watched Kendall Ellis run down
That was insane, bro.
Purdue.
Yeah.
JV, what's her name? JV, or I forgot her name. I'm so sorry, I forgot her name. But watching her rerun that race, because I've watched Kendall since she was in high school.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, like I'm watching this race. I know how the race ends, but I'm watching it over and over. So 4x4.
So what's the hardest workout you've ever done, and what's the hardest workout you've ever gave your athletes, you think?
Hardest workout I've ever done is a broken 800. I just can't tell you which one. Or broken 8, it's a broken workout. I've done broken 8s and I've done broken 7s. I want to say broken 7s was harder than broken 8s because the way Coach T broke them down, it was 350, 350.
Oh.
And it was like 52-second pace for both of them. And then the rest is a 50-meter jog. It's not a 50-meter walk. It's a 50-meter jog. So it's like, yo, so you thought lactate was bad before? Yeah, try 350 meters in lactate. You're not going to worry about it in the meet anymore. And then the hardest one that I've ever given, I can't say. I would probably say it would be 600 meters the hard way, and that was for sprinters. So it's like an all-out 60. And they're running it shuttle style. So they literally only have, 60 is like 7 seconds times 4. So they have like 28 seconds rest in between each 60, and all of them are all out, and they have to do 10. I literally, every time we do that workout, I have no one standing afterwards. I know it's a workout that's necessary, but I'm never the one to try and kill kids at workouts.
Of course.
That workout, every time, everybody's laid out, and I'm just like, I question whether or not it's a good workout every time, but it does the job.
Yeah. So the next question is, what are your favorite running shoes?
Oof. I'm a Pegasus guy. I'm a Nike Pegasus guy. Now, there are some ASICs that I love. I just don't know what the model are. So.
Okay, and this isn't on here, but I just thought of it. When was the last time you ran?
Yesterday when I caught a cramp running from the 2-mile mark.
Coach Josh were sprinting to the mile marker yesterday. Oh my God, we were gassed.
Every cross country meet is the last time that I run. I want to get back into the habit of running because I did challenge Michael and Jaden to a 600-meter race right after they graduate. I know I'm going to get dragged. But if I can just go through at 52 for the 400, I don't even care what my last 200 looks like. So it's like, yeah, I feel good again. I can go through at 52 again. That's going to take all of the rest of the year to get.
Oh yeah, you'll never be able to run again.
Exactly.
And then final question: what was the proudest moment of your coaching career?
Ooh.
This doesn't have to. Yeah, this doesn't have to be like a race, or it could be anything as far as coaching, like getting athletes to college, or
maybe 2 things if you want.
Yeah,
I got 2 for me. So.
This is gonna sound weird, right? The proudest moment that I had as a coach, right? And I'm gonna fanboy for a second. Was getting an email reply from Coach Holloway at Florida. Like that had proudest moment because I was like, yo, he took the time to reply to my email. I was like showing everybody, and they're like, well, let me read what he said. And I was like, no. But it was a trying time in my coaching career, and I was kind of debating whether or not I should do it or not. And I was like, hey, like life was getting really rough, really hard. And he reached out. He said some really, really kind words, and he was, he kind of pushed me on that path. And it was like, I don't even think he knows like what he did in that conversation. He does not know. I'm pretty sure he doesn't, and he probably will never know until like 10, 15 years from now. But dude, like, had he not replied, I probably wouldn't be coaching right now, So that I thank him for every day without him ever knowing it.
Yeah, that's crazy. But all right, so that wraps out the All Out Kick Round. And that wraps up the podcast. So
guys, it was a pleasure. This was fun. We gotta do this again at some point.
Most definitely. Probably actually when I come back. We could probably hop on.
Yeah, we could do that. We could talk, like, we could pick, like, favorite race memories and stuff, and we could talk about you running my kids now. Hurt my feelings.
Oh, man. But, all right, it was a pleasure having you, Coach Josh. Like I said, guys, this is the end.